You're listening to the Mississippi Outdoors Podcast. I'm Matt Wyatt, and today we're talking to someone who is in the Mississippi Sports Hall of Fame, who's a former PGA Tour golfer, and whose name is synonymous with the sport of golf here in the state of Mississippi, Mr. Randy Watkins.
This episode of the Mississippi Outdoors Podcast is brought to you by the Foundation for Mississippi Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks.
It's not every day that you get to talk to someone who is a Mississippi Sports Hall of Famer, a PGA Tour veteran, and also an avid outdoorsman, and along with that, a Mississippian. Randy Watkins with us here on the Mississippi Outdoors Podcast, and I'm Matt Wyatt. Randy, good to see you, man.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it. We're glad to see you again. It's been a while since we did Tee to Green so many years ago.
Tee to Green, I mentioned that a little bit ago. I don't know how many years, but close to 20 years ago.
Got to be close to 20.
On a news segment that you did for many, many years here in the Jackson market, golf tips on local news.
I did Tee to Green on WLBT for 22 or 3 years, and on Monday nights during the news broadcast. And Chuck Stinson and I switched it to Sunday nights to just do something different, and did a 30-minute program after the news on Sunday nights. And but WLBT was great for me, and it was great to give folks like you lessons and tips and promote the game of golf. I love doing it, and I'm real thankful for that opportunity. It was a lot of fun for me.
So, Randy, I want to kind of you to take me back a little bit. Take me back to your childhood and how you were introduced to the game of golf, and then also the outdoors, just kind of what life was like for you that introduced you to these things that you have kind of become known for here in Mississippi.
Sort of a cool story. My dad and my grandfather, his father, were both outdoors guys. They were hunters and golfers. Never been a fisherman in the Watkins family. We couldn't catch a fish in a bucket. But they loved being outside. They loved outdoors. They just liked nature. And I'm the middle of three boys. I have an older brother and a younger brother. And at 9 or 10 years old, my dad invited me to go with him to the golf course one day to play with his Saturday morning group. They had his normal foursome. Somebody couldn't play, so I'm going to bring Randy, and you get to drive the cart. And so it was here at the Country Club of Jackson, and we playing along, and I'm having a ball just driving the cart, listening to them jawing back and forth, and they're playing 50-cent bets. There's no money involved, but they picking and kidding. And finally we got to a hole where we had to wait a minute, and it got clear, and my dad threw down a ball and said, "You want to hit one?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And I took out a 3-wood, which is the hardest club in the bag to hit, and I ripped it. And to this minute, I can still remember where I was and how well I hit that ball and what it meant to me to hit that ball that well. And I fell in love, and it was my first love, and I expect it'll be my last one too, that I just loved it. But the nature part of golf, being outside and fresh cut grass, it was beautifully manicured, and there's always something, and every golf course is different. No offense to tennis, but a tennis court looks the same, and Madison does it in Pebble Beach. But the golf courses are all uniquely different, and so are the woods. So if you go hunting, deer hunting, and I've hunted in a lot of different places, every place is different, every setup is different. It's always interesting to me, and I think I was interested in the feel of what you felt like when you're outside. There's some freedom to that sort of gets you in your soul, and I can't imagine not being an outdoors person. And I'm fortunate today I still get to spend a great deal of my days outside, mostly teaching the game. I don't play much golf anymore, but I teach it I've got age range from 10 to 85. So,
how about that? Which
is really cool for me and fun.
Sure.
But my grandfather and my dad were just cool. They were sort of amateur gun collectors. They had a real affection for Browning rifles and Colt pistols and Winchester shotguns. They just had a keen eye for guns and the outdoors. And so I just sort of adopted that. Of my brothers, I was the one that got that. Mm-hmm. And my dad was my dad had a real love for golf and airplanes.
Okay.
And wanted to be a pilot. He went in the Navy, but he didn't. His vision wasn't sharp enough at the time, so he didn't get to fly. But my older brother went on to become a fighter pilot in the Air Force, and my little brother flew helicopters for the Army Guard.
Wow.
So my dad was
He had such an influence on y'all.
yeah, it was sort of cool. He took stuff that he loved and he picked the son that had the demeanor, acumen, or ability to do that.
How about that?
Like in my household, I was the most athletic and the most patient. So he said, golf's for you. Now, my big brother, who was the fighter pilot, was completely without fear of anything or anybody. He liked speed, he liked fear, he liked danger. He was that guy. And my little brother was just smart, like just really, really smart. And today he's just smart. Fly helicopter really shouldn't fly, but he could figure out how, and he got curious about it and learned how to fly helicopters. And my dad just sort of was a great steerer of us boys to something we all love. We all had a career, and all three of us have stayed in the same career our whole lives because we loved it.
He sounds like a great leader.
He was.
You know, I think about leaders, great ones.
Yep.
They have that knack for on the team who fits where.
Yes. It's a guiding sort of mission.
Yeah.
My mother ran the ship, and she ran it, but he guided the ship. This boy needs to go toward that. Like, I liked baseball, but only if I pitched.
Okay.
There was some control issues in my personality. I wanted to win or lose on my own. I could take it either way. Football, I didn't love the game of football. It was too much of a team game for me. Golf's the worst team game there ever was.
Sure.
It's really not a team sport. They have them, and even in college, it just wasn't. Because
what was your dad's reaction when you hit that shot with that 3-wood as a little boy?
I can hear him now going, boy, you popped that one. And we may have something here. And then he just started feeding me access to, and there wasn't a lot of golf lessons. It's not like today where, because the pro worked in the pro shop and he didn't get out that much. It wasn't like I didn't get any lessons. He just threw me out there. Luck being as it is, the Country Club of Jackson had 27 holes of golf, and the extra 9 holes was called the Blue Nine. And at that time, this was in the 70s, early 70s, that 9 holes was really for the women and the children to be out of the way of the men members. And so ladies golf wasn't as big as it is today either. So us kids, David Allen, who you know from Starkville that played at Mississippi, he and I were the same age, same class. We would go around and round that Blue Nine. Matter of fact, more than once, we've walked it 7 times in a day and walked 63 holes, just completely in love with it.
Yeah.
That's just another fortunate turn for me. But it was really born of my dad's passion for being out and being in nature and matching that with the sun. At 10 years old, he could see that I needed to be playing a sport. I was best suited for a game that required patience and acceptance of failure, because you fail so much in golf, same as a pitcher.
Yeah.
And he said, if you want to play football, but you can kick because it fits you.
Yeah.
You don't, I mean, you can live with it if you make it or you miss it. Your brothers can't do that. And so I just didn't love the game, so I steered toward, I played baseball all the way through high school.
Yeah.
But only if I could pitch.
Pitch. Because you could be in control.
Yep.
And isn't it interesting too that, and I guess this is true for anyone listening, that there may be kids or parents who have kids right now that God just sort of put something in us that we're geared certain ways.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
You know, you mentioned football. It's absolutely true. Like if you have an individual sort of mindset, or you know, that's the way you thrive. Football, you're going to struggle because you have 10 other guys you have to work in concert with.
Correct.
Also in football, sometimes the madder you get, the better you play.
Correct.
It doesn't work in golf, does it?
Golf does not. No, it'll spit you out. You know, it repels that.
Yeah.
It just doesn't allow for it. It requires a lot of self-control and the acceptance part of, you know, you're going to hit bad shots. You know you're going to get a bad bounce, and you just deal with it. But if you bow up on it, it'll bow up right back at you.
So is there a parallel there in that mindset between golf and, say, deer hunting, and the patience and the quiet and the outdoor and the alone time required to actually succeed in that sport too?
I think so. I think there's a lot to. I used to try to apply when I first started hunting. I was taught. My dad. One of my dad's best friends was a big hunter, and he hunted with me more than my dad did because he was retired. My dad was still working, so I went with him more, and he taught me how to read the woods and find rubs and scrapes and trails and bedding and food and all that sort of stuff. So it was sort of like a golf course to me. How does this deer make a living? So how do I play this hole to the best of my ability where I can make a par? Well, the par initially is to see the deer, is to be where he's going to be. And then if it's a birdie, if you actually harvest the animal. But I remember going, and I still love to go through the woods and think about those things like I do a golf hole. Like if I see a hole, I can chart the hole the best way for me to make a par, because par is the goal. And that was another one of my dad's lessons when I first got to be pretty good at it, and I would shoot par, even par, and I'd fuss about it a little bit. And he'd say, let me see that scorecard. And he'd hand it to me. He said, let's see. It says, if you play the hole perfectly on every hole, you shoot 72. You shot 72. He said, guys like me will never do that. Do not ever fuss about it. The architect designed this golf course for par, for a pro to shoot. If he plays well, to shoot par. You shot par. You're not even a pro. You should be proud of that. Now, you should aspire for more, but you can't fuss about it. It was just little things that your dad will throw out, the little digs that, that you do it.
And you listen to him because you trust him.
100%, because he was dad.
Yeah.
And he loved the game, and he was never, my dad was a 12 handicap at his very best. And he taught me, and one of the things I like about golf, and I still love it today, is that he used to say the handicap system in golf, he said, it's a separator from other sports. Because he would say, here I am at age 50. At that time, Jack Nicklaus was 30. I can take my handicap and play from my tees, and Jack can take his handicap and go way back there to his tees, and we can play a match. And so I was taught early, when I played my father, and he was a 12, and he'd put a dot on the 12 hardest holes where he'd get a stroke. And then we'd get to the first tee, he'd say, all right, I get a stroke from you on these 12. I'm playing from that tee up there. You are a scratch. You're playing from that tee back there. You get 0. So you're giving me 12 shots, but there's one on these 12 holes, and we're going to fight. We're going to compete for bragging rights, and we get after it. He loved that about the game, the equitable balance of you don't have to be good. The game will allow you to not be and still play with someone who's good and not feel like he didn't have any insecurities about that at all. I worked for a living. I didn't start playing golf till after I was out of the Navy. I was a grown man in my first job before I ever started. So all you ever do is play golf and practice and work on it and compete. So you're constantly, the game allows for it. I can't play tennis against Jimmy Connors.
Right.
Under any circumstances, I can't play basketball with Dr. J.
Right. I
can't climb in the batter's box against Sandy Koufax. I can't do it. I can play you, I can play Jack Nicklaus, I can play Arnold Palmer. And I may not win, but I'm not dead in the water. Yeah. I got a shot.
And there's always that element, kind of like, on a hunting trip, on a fishing trip, there's always that element of today could be a good day.
Yes, yes.
Right?
It could be the best day. Like my grandfather's saying was, oh, you don't ever know when the next shot you hit's going to be the best you ever hit in your life. Now, he worked 52 years in a steel mill, so he didn't start until he was retired from steel work. Tough old guy. Hunting's the same. When I get there, I go with it's the perfect day, the perfect weather. I've done a little homework. I sort of got an idea. I've seen some stuff. I'm going to be there and hope he comes. And I'm going to stay hopeful until my back gives out or it's just time to go.
Yeah.
But I love the hopefulness of seeing it. And of course, I now have the perspective of being 62, and you got more years behind you than you do in front of you. It's just different.
Sure.
And so I just want to see them, and I like to see how they make a living more than I do shooting.
Yeah. So you made it to the PGA Tour.
Yes.
Now, that's one little short sentence. Just takes just a few words to say it.
Yeah.
But there is a ton of weight behind somebody who says, I played golf on the PGA Tour. How do you sum up what your journey was like along with the experience of doing it? How do you sum that up?
The best way I can describe it, I don't know anybody's asked it that exact way, but there was never, ever, not for a minute, a deviation of that dream. Mm-hmm. I wanted that, and that was born in 1973. Lee Trevino came to Jackson, Mississippi, and he was sponsored by Dr. Pepper and the Brown family, who still has the Dr. Pepper distributorship here. Got him to come to Jackson, Brookwood Country Club in South Jackson, and Dr. Pepper at that time sponsored a junior golf tour. And I was one of about 20 of us that made an all-star team. And the clinic was for the all-stars at Brookwood. And I remember, as clear as I remember, the sun rising in the east. Sitting on the ground, Lee Trevino not 6 feet from me, hitting the balls away from me. And right now I can hear the sound of his strike. Yeah. And I went home and told my dad, I said, I got it. I know what I want. I want to hit a ball like that guy. I want it to sound like that. Now, I would love to have his effervescent personality, but I wanted that strike, that sound, because it was every single shot was whoosh, it was perfect. It was just perfect. And so I set about doing that. Now, 11 years later, a lot of miles in this 11 years, I qualified for the U.S. Open in 1984 at Wingfoot. You may remember Fuzzy Zeller and Greg Norman had the towel waving experience. I was in that U.S. Open for a couple of days. But I got a practice round with Lee Trevino.
Wow.
At just dumb luck. It wasn't organized. He didn't have a game. He's on the putting green. My caddy and his caddy were friends. And he said, you got a game? I said, no, I'm just going to go out whenever the tee clears. He said, Lee ain't got a game. Let's go. So I went over and introduced myself, and he said, you follow me. This place is packed with people everywhere. Yeah. And I had not seen that before because I had played several tour events prior, but nothing like a U.S. Open and nothing like a Lee Trevino vibe.
Sure.
And so I just walked behind him in his wake. I'm way bigger than he is, but his caddy's bigger than me. And I got right behind he and his caddy in his wake and went to the first tee. And for 5 hours, I played golf with Lee Trevino on a practice round and got to tell him that story. And he really thought that was cool.
So he was someone who, in a practice round, would converse and talk and teach. And
really? He actually teach. He was one of the, not few, but there weren't that many veterans that would take an interest in a rookie. And at the time, I was 22 years old and had only played 6 or 8 tour events at that point. Yeah. So I'm still a little nervy.
It's all brand new.
It's brand new, and I'm way out of my comfort zone in the U.S. Open.
What was it like in that experience, hitting shots with that many people watching you?
Brutally hard. Yeah. Every insecurity you have will show up right there because they're right on you, and they can see you. I don't have a helmet on. I don't have a mask. They can look at you, and they're watching, and so is he. Mm-hmm. I would have been just as nervous just with Trevino probably as I would with the thousands that were out there. And we were playing behind, this was a cool story, Nicholas, Fuzzy, Ray Floyd, Lanny, Greg Norman. They were playing for some money, big money. And it was a big crowd. And I actually got a picture. We stand on a par 3 tee with them. It's always slow at a U.S. Open. And we're standing on a tee box waiting on them to play, and there's a lot of chat, and Trevino's up in there talking with them, and Bill Rogers had joined us. So it was me and Lee and Bill Rogers, and we're sort of all standing in a wad on this par 3. Well, they tee off and they finish the hole, and we tee off and finish the hole. And we're walking down off that tee, and out of that crowd, for the first time, I hear my name. And I look over, and the guy waves, and he says, "I'm from Jackson."
Oh, wow.
And he had taken a Polaroid Instamatic of me standing there with those guys and handed it to me.
Oh, wow.
I still have it.
I guarantee you still have it.
You better believe I still got it. Right.
What a story.
It was an awesome experience.
That is just incredible.
Awesome experience. And there really wasn't, it was not unusual for me to play somewhere and somebody from Mississippi speak. The Mississippians just like Mississippians, like I do it.
Yeah, I do it too.
But people, they just drawn to it. It might be a rebel.
Yeah.
Because I had some hottie toddies. Then I heard just this guy wasn't an Ole Miss necessarily. He was just, I'm from Jackson.
Yeah.
Well, here I go. I got to go talk to him.
Yeah, what a story.
And it was awesome. But that happened in city after city, and it made my fondness for Mississippi deeper. And I never wanted to leave here. A lot of tour players moved to Florida, or Arizona, or Texas to go further south, better weather. It never dawned on me to leave Mississippi. I just loved too much about it, including probably the geography and the people. Maybe not in that order.
Yeah. You know, I was going to say, for a kid, okay, who grows up, who naturally, intrinsically loves the outdoors,
Yep.
has a knack for and loves golf, loves to hunt and fish, and has a dad who introduced it to him, I don't know that there's a better place for God to plant you than the state of Mississippi.
100% agree. 100%. And my advantages over my brothers were the amount of minutes and hours I got with my dad, just me and him, playing golf.
Yeah.
Or me with his buddies, filling in the foursome. And on the occasion when they allowed a fivesome, which they didn't in the 70s, there was no such thing as fivesomes, but I would drive the cart while the four played. If my dad just wanted to keep feeding me the experience. But I got so many hours with my dad with something that we shared a love for, and he was nurturing that in me. Now, they did have other things too, but it still didn't have the amount of time that golf or hunting. They didn't hunt. They didn't take up to hunting like I did. So I also got that time with my dad that was more than my brothers. And that wasn't orchestrated. It wasn't intentional. It was just that when you go hunting, it's several hours, and it can be a weekend. We didn't many times spend the night, but it was always multiple hours together.
Yeah.
Whether it's in the car talking about the hunt, prior to or after. What'd you see? In those days, sometimes it was a big deal if you just saw a track.
Sure.
If you saw a track, you were like a star. Maybe you saw a deer track out there. And, just that stuff. I'm really grateful for those times. But that was the affection for my dad and his love of outdoors sort of bled into me. And I look out my window of my office, and what I look at is a golf course. And I never take that for granted.
And you had a period of time, a good long period of time, where because of your experience in pro golf and teaching and golf course management and those kinds of things, you actually helped the Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks with the state courses.
Did for many, many years, over 15 years. Dr. Polis and I were friends, and the golf business was sort of evolving and changing. And this agency didn't have golf until 1996, when the legislature funded the construction of Mallard Point in Sardis, which is a beautiful place and a great park, and at Quail Hollow in Macomb and Percy Quinn State Park, another beautiful piece of ground and a great state park. And LaFleur's Bluff had been here, as it was once called, when I was a kid, it was Riverside Park. Okay. That's what it was called. And then, I don't know, the agency must have taken it over around that time. So now they've become in the golf business. Well, at that time, Dr. Polis said, they hand me these golf courses, but they didn't give me a penny or a person to deal with the issues, and there are many. And so I worked as a consultant alongside he and his staff for many years, just to sort of direct the maintenance and the operations of the golf course. I loved it. I loved every minute of my relationship inside these walls and with him and his people and our state park system, which our family used for Carol and I. We have 2 children, and we would, when the kids started age 3, we and friends with kids similar ages would rent out an entire section of cabins at Roosevelt and Holmes County. We would flop years, but sometimes it'd be Roosevelt, sometimes it'd be Holmes County, and spend a weekend. We called it Big Chill. And we just got out in the outdoors and threw the footballs and played sandlot baseball and shot hoops and hiked and tried to fish. And that's, we just did and stayed in the outdoors and loved it. So I have a great affection for the parks. It goes way back too. I think it's something that ought to be, and they're improving them now. They're investing a lot in them, and I'm real proud of that because I think I think they're all Mississippi treasures, and I haven't been to all of them, but the ones I have been to, I think they're fantastic.
Yeah, they're at Mallard Point. So funding approved mid-90s, 96, and I guess time frame in terms of once they got it completed was another 5 years, 6 years, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And not long after it would have been completed, I had the opportunity to see it. I haven't been up there since, but what I remembered about it from a golf standpoint, it would be challenging because it's very hilly.
Really hilly. Really beautiful piece of ground. And you get to see Sardis Lake, which is so pretty. It's so
gorgeous.
Big, and it doesn't play down on the water very often, but you do get to see it. And the clubhouse sits up on a bluff. It's just spectacular piece of ground. They make great places. It sort of came on the heels of the Robert Trent Jones when Alabama did their big deal.
Yeah.
This was sort of our small effort. I think Charlie Williams was state representative from Senatobia, sort of quarterbacked that deal, and it was our effort at that. Obviously, we didn't do it as big as Alabama did, but I'm so grateful they're there. They fill a great void, and I'll be honest with you, they're great for the local areas. And then Grenada, Dogwoods and Grenada came about much later. It was still in the same appropriation, but just couldn't get done, whatever. And then the city of Grenada stepped up and decided to get behind it and sort of operate it. And so I helped them actually open that golf course.
Okay.
The contractor sort of walked off the project, so we helped complete the construction and get it open and hire people and set the place, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
That is a fantastic golf course.
Yeah.
And Quail Hollow is one of the most enjoyable golf courses you'll ever play in your life.
How so?
It's just enjoyable. It's not complicated. It's plenty of challenge, but like I would say, my dad would love to play that course because there is water on it, but it's not right in his face. He didn't like having to force carry over a water. He said that wasn't fair to him. Put it on the sides, and it's up to me to go around it.
Yeah.
But it's got beautiful topography, not as steep as Mallard Point, but it's plenty of topography on it. It just the way it was laid out and designed. Arthur Hills designed that golf course, and he's a top-notch. He really has designed some beauties in this country, and that's one of them.
One of them.
Yep.
Randy, far be it from me to be one of these hosts that does all the talking, but I have to tell you a golf story of mine to illustrate something you said. I played college football at Mississippi State.
Yep.
We played football games in the 90s and the SEC championship game, and we played in front of 90,000, 80,000. It's one thing to take a snap, kick a football, throw it, catch it, run in front of all those people.
Yep.
A few years ago, I got to play in a Pro-Am at Fallen Oak for the senior team. And I was with Fred Funk. It's the only experience like that in my whole life.
Wow.
Okay.
Yep.
And it couldn't have been better with Fred Funk.
Good guy.
He picked on me about having big feet all day. I stepped in his line one time, and I apologized, and he made the putt anyway. Yeah. And all day long, he'd say, "Hey, Matt, come step in my line for me." Things like that. Well, I was off the green on what is 18 at Fallen Oak. on my second shot, and I needed to execute a little chip shot onto the putting surface in the green. But they had the grandstand around, and everybody partying up there in the grandstand for the practice round. Didn't think anything of it. I go up. It's time to hit my little chip shot. But everybody that was up there partying, they don't know who I am, don't care. But because of golf etiquette, all the noise stopped.
Yep.
Randy, I had the club in my hands. I'm over the ball. I've addressed it, and all the noise stopped. You could have heard a bird tweet. And I just glanced up a minute and realized they're all looking at me.
Yes.
And now I've got to execute this shot.
Right.
And they're dead silent. And now they're all waiting on me.
Every eye's on you.
And I'm getting sped up. And my heart started going,
Yeah.
okay. So I bring the club back and I bladed it right across the green, skidded it over into the bunker on the other side over there. And here I go walking with them all watching. And so this time, because they had seen that shot, this time they didn't bother to be quiet. They didn't care anymore. This guy ain't serious, and they let me finish with noise, which I was more comfortable with.
Yeah.
I say that to say I've done things in front of a lot of people watching, but when it's just me and the club's in my hands, my fingers and hands and muscles did crazy things.
It's unreal what your body can do. It is, and look, that takes a while to get used to it. It took me I'm not really sure I ever really conquered it. Mm-hmm. That feeling of, at this moment, every single eyeball is on you, pass or fail, right now, and it's quick.
I wonder if some guys ever actually just hit the shot to get it over with.
Oh, you better believe it. All of them. I've never met one that hadn't said, "We got to just get this move." And I can remember on the first tee of the U.S. Open on Thursday. And the USGA is really formal, and so they announced you really with my name is Thomas Randolph Watkins, so I go by my middle name. Well, they don't know that, so they introduced me as Thomas Watkins, which they wouldn't have known They wouldn't have known if it was Randy either. Mm-hmm. But it's real formal, so it's a little unnerving. And I remember leaning down and put my ball on the tee, and I could see my knees shaking. Well, there's an old trick of the tour players, they stall. You go back to the bag and you get the towel and just wipe your hand off. And my hands were sweaty, but that wasn't there for that. It was really, I needed a few seconds. And my caddy, who was from here, looked at me and says, "Get up there and hit it. Let's go. We got to go." Yeah. He could tell I was not there. I couldn't settle. But once you get off the first tee, you can sort of go on about your business. But when my knee was shaking in my pants on that first tee, and he saw it, and I saw it, and that means everybody on that side of me could see it. Yeah. Hit it. Let's go. Yeah. He was a veteran caddy. He wasn't a rookie. He'd been around a long time.
Isn't that great?
As a matter of fact, he'd done a lot with Ray Floyd and Calvin Pete, and I was grateful for that because at one time all the caddies were African American. And they were either from Dallas, Jackson, or Atlanta. And Jackson had a wad of them, all of them great ones. Yeah. And I knew them they knew me as a kid because when they weren't on tour, they were at the country club of Jackson caddying for the big guys, the big gambling guys that played for a lot of money that were good golfers. So they know me since I was little. So me finding a caddy was easy and a good one. So I always had some advantage over that. It was cool.
Yeah, that really is cool. What's life like for you now?
Well, I'm a grandparent of 4. They age range from 10 months to 5 years. And there's 3 girls and a boy.
Oh, man.
I take my 5-year-old granddaughter to school twice a week on Tuesdays and Friday mornings. The best 30 minutes in a day you can get.
That's great.
And they all live here. We don't have to travel. As a matter of fact, my daughter and her 5-year-old, they live, and her husband live in our neighborhood. So we see them often, and my son works for me, does all our junior golf, has a great junior golf program, primarily at Whisper Lake, but some at Lake Caroline and some at Patrick Farms. But so I see his kids quite often, and my little brother lives in town, and a lot of family for us. But I think that's a Mississippi thing too. I think it's a.
It absolutely is.
I've seen it. I still see it. I love it. I'm fortunate for that. Carol and I don't take it for granted that we don't have to leave town on holidays to chase. No offense to anybody that has to do it.
Sure.
And we would do it. obviously.
But you don't have to.
We don't have to. We're grateful for that. And so I teach a lot of golf, and I teach mostly in the afternoons, and I love it. I love that I can still help and nurture folks to love the game. We built a, Matt, I don't know if I told you this, but a year and a half ago, I had 11 acres of raw land at Whisper Lake that I owned, thinking one day I would sell it to a developer to put more homes out there. Mm-hmm. And sort of started that process about the time the real estate market pummeled, which was good because I would have gotten killed on it. Nothing happened to it, just sat raw. Well, a few years ago, these little short course practice courses started becoming in vogue. It started at Pinehurst, and they built a thing called the Cradle, and it's 9 holes, par threes, ranging from 50 yards to 150 yards, all walking, no carts.
Okay.
And a good friend of mine that I played against in college that was a great player at Auburn named Bill Bergen, ventured out as an architect. He played the tour for a year or two, was a great player, a good guy. I seen where he had done a couple of these things. So I called him. I said, tell me about this concept. I'm intrigued by what these things are. And so just over the course of several phone calls, I said, well, I got a piece of land I wouldn't mind looking at. So he came over. Well, we put a plan together. We built it. And it's called The Loop. And it's 6 holes, 40 yards to 120 yards. Small greens. There's a couple of bunkers. No water on it. Everything's mowed as fairway or green. That's it. There's no rough. It's real easy to walk. It really only eats up about 8.5 acres. And it's a loop. 3 holes go that way and 3 holes loop back to a big practice chipping and putting green. And I hope that that'll be my legacy, that kids or grown-ups would understand that if you can practice and really hone a short game, you can play golf anywhere, forever, and you can improve the fastest by the mostest. Mm-hmm. If you're good with a wedge and good with a putter, and all you got to do is do it.
Yeah, reps,
and get off the driving range, pounding 5 irons and 7 irons. It's just ridiculous. I just saw recently my hero Lee Trevino said he wasn't in an interview. He was hitting balls on a driving range, and a guy was talking to him, and the guy said, "How did you get so good?" He said, "Yeah, how he does." He just, I'll tell you. He said, "I grew up by a pitch and putt, a little par 3 course, and he said the holes range from 50 yards to 150 yards. I stayed on it all day long, and I would go to the range, which was right next to it, which like ours is set up, and I would hit drivers only. I practiced short game and driver." He said, and I believe this to be true, there's only 3 clubs of the 14 you got to be good at, and you got to be good at them: driver, wedge, putter. The rest of them you can be average because you're going to be.
Right.
No matter how good you are, you're only going to hit so many good 4 irons.
Well, and you're not going to hit as many 4 irons. Most people are, you?
You don't going to use them as much. Right. You could go 2 weeks not hit a 4 iron. As a tour player, you might not hit your 3-wood for a month. It's just you have to drive it in play, and then you have to be able to wedge and putt. If you can do those things, you can become a very good player, a skilled player. And I want our kids, and we're having great success with lady beginners starting on this, learn how to chip and putt. Me and my son teach the game backwards: putt, chip, pitch, approach, drive. If you can learn the touch, it's a little bit like if you started your son with soft toss with a ball, back and forth, nice and soft, and he gets pretty good at it. You back him up, and then you back him up, and then you start burning a little bit, and then there's long toss, and it's sort of that way where most people introduce people to golf. You put a driver on the hand, put them on the first tee. Yeah. Good luck with that. Right. You're setting them up to fail.
Right.
Because it's really hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to do that.
Well, it's so fascinating to me, as I hear you talk about it. First of all, the passion's obvious.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's a stretch for me to remember back early in our conversation how you were describing those extra 9 holes at Jackson Country Club that were for kids and women, because they didn't want you on the course slowing everybody down.
Correct.
So that was yours. And so you got to walk that and play and walk, and it fit you.
Yep.
And it sort of, not only did it whet your appetite, but it fed your reps and your ability. So I'm wondering, I see it now. You got a course here that's 40 to 120 yards, and it's 6 holes.
Yep.
And so a young person, a young Randy, is going to come off that course in about 3 years and ready to start whipping some tail on the 18.
You better believe it. And we're seeing it now. I got a couple of 10, 11-year-old boys and some girls that are there every day. I got one little guy, he's 10, and I tell him all the time he's the record holder. He's played the most loop rounds. He'll get dizzy going around that thing. Well, he doesn't even know what I know, how good he's going to be 5 years from now, 3 years from now, because he's going to have a short game. And it's sometimes just him by himself. He might have a buddy. It might be his dad. But he is round and round and round. And it does transfer 50 years later from my time on the Blue Nine that in my memory, we were the only ones out there. Like, I don't remember seeing people other than us kids, David and I, and there'd be others with us. But we didn't see grown-ups. And we walked. So we're carrying our bag. We're doing the deal. We're learning how to judge yardage, how to pace off golf courses, how to chart the golf course, how to play certain holes a different way. That if you can't do this, you got to do it that way. You got to play to your strengths like you do in anything. You got to figure out what they are. And so it was trial and error. It was just us doing it. And the more we did it, the more we loved it. The more we loved it, the better we got.
Yeah.
And I think the Loop is going to do that. Tupelo Country Club has a great short course up there for their kid. They got a good junior
and Drew,
program.
he does a great job with the kids program.
Real
camps
good.
in the summer.
Really good. And that's a real big deal in Mississippi now. And right now we have 4 men on the PGA Tour card carrying guys on the tour, and we have one lady, Allie Ewing, who's a star. And 3 of our guys have been high achievers on tour already. Chad Ramey's won, Davis Riley's won, Hayden Buckley's going to ultimately, and now Wilson Furr is a rookie from Jackson, played at Alabama. There's more to come.
Yep.
And both of our, both Ole Miss and State guys and girls are both ranked in the top 25. Southern's on the rise with their men's team, and now they're starting to grow their ladies' team. We're going to keep producing them because we have good programs, and we have so many good golf courses that have programs for kids and access to good instruction, like VJ Trolio at Old Waverly, who's the best in the business, and my son Thomas, who I'm bragging on. But the state of Mississippi has good courses, good practice facilities, and good instructors that now have. We're producing some great players. I'm real proud of that because it was a long time between me and Jonathan Randolph was the next guy on tour after me.
That's a pretty big
which
time
is pretty
gap.
good size.
Well, it sounds like that we could be about to see almost a new era of
100%.
Golf in Mississippi.
100%.
In terms of participation, sort of what's the word I'm looking for? The cachet that it brings with all the pros, men and women, Allie McDonald and others.
Yep. And parents have now seen that golf is an avenue, is a sport for lots of kids with lots of different abilities, and particularly on the female side, there's so many girls in the game right now. When I leave you here, I'm going to teach 2 12-year-old sisters. There's triplets, but one of them doesn't play, but 2 of them I got this afternoon. But there's so many girls, and in Thomas's program, he must have 300 kids in his junior program. So many of them now. I never saw a girl on a golf course in junior high or in high school. And when I was at Ole Miss didn't have a women's golf team. Mississippi State didn't have a women's golf team. Right. Florida did. Furman, Duke. There was some golf, but the SEC, there might have been 2 schools so we never saw them. Now, not only do you see them, they're good at it, and they're competitive, and they're dedicated to it, and their technique. I tell my members all the time, don't watch the guys on tour and try to do what they do. Watch the ladies and do what they do. You can grip it, set up to it, and tempo it like the ladies. They're exquisite to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. So you met your hero on a golf course,
Yep.
naturally, Lee Trevino.
Yeah.
What a story. I met he might be my hero on the golf course. Bill Dance was fishing in a boat at Old Waverly at the Catch a Dream tournament they used to host.
I remember that.
WTVA television sent me up there with a camera to cover it, do the golf thing. And I
Sure.
looked out in the lake.
So tea.
I said, somebody's fishing in that lake in a boat with a white and orange hat. I said, is that Bill Dance? They said, that's him. I said, you think I could interview him? They said, go down there and ask him. So I waved him over. He came over and he was sitting out there catching fish in the middle of that pond at Old Waverly. And no kidding now, Randy. So I meet my hero, Bill Dance. He let me interview. He was as nice as he could be. And then I thought, well, I'm working. I got to get my job done. So I walked up to the tee box on number 10 at Old Waverly and filmed Fuzzy Zeller hitting a tee shot there and interacting with the people and everything, which is, again, really cool. And I kind of identify with you a little bit there. Meet your hero on the golf course.
See, that's cool that your hero was a fisherman.
Right, fisherman, yeah.
Well, he's the guy.
Right,
he
really is.
He's Arnold Palmer of fishing. And Arnold Palmer was my guy.
Okay, well,
as
nobody cooler
nobody
than Arnold Palmer.
Nobody. My dad used to my dad would settle all arguments over, or anybody would argue about what's the best country in the world. He'd say, hold on. He said, we have Elvis, Arnold Palmer. What you got? You're beat.
And one of the two from Mississippi.
Both of them named the king. That's it. Now you put your two up and we'll just see.
And we win.
And I still say that. I've said this all over the country when people will say something like Mississippi. And I said, I'll tell you what to do. Let's do this. Why don't you name the 3 best football players from your state? Go ahead. I'll take mine. You're going to get beat because I'm going to start out with Walter Payton, Jerry Rice. Now, I got a bunch to pick from on quarterbacks. But I'm going to put Archie in there, but you can get Brett Favre or Charlie Connolly or a lot of them. Now, we go to music. I'll just say Elvis. I don't have to say B.B. King, but I'll throw him in there if you need another one. And then on television, I'll just take Oprah. You're beat. And in literature, you're beat there. Well, I'll just take Grisham. Now y'all get after it.
Right.
So I said, we produce people. We produce characters. We produce talented, deeply affected people in what they do. Like in Mississippi, they're affectionate about their pursuit. They are. Well, no matter what it is. Like all those people I just named loved what they did and loved what they were. And I think that's a Mississippi trait. And I have that same fortune of I've loved being a golfer. I can't imagine there anything else I would have done or could have done, and I'm proud of it. I'm thankful for both my parents and my grandfather for just feeding me a little bit and saying, you're the one. Go do that. I bet you can do it. And today I still wake up every day. I can't wait to be around golf.
Well, and I'm thankful for you sharing your story with me a little bit.
Thanks for having me here. And I have a lot of affection for the outdoors and for this agency. Wildlife Fisheries and Parks is a big part of Mississippi, and I think they're so good. They're so dedicated. And I've said this many times in many meetings with Dr. Polis. I've never met state agency employees more passionate about what they do than in this building. It's not possible to be more.
I agree.
Passionate about it, and that just feeds people like us that love the outdoors. That look at these people are dedicated their life to it, whether they're biologists or officers or in this building. It doesn't matter. They're just passionate about it. I just think it's cool.
Yeah. No question about it. By the way, the deputy director, Larry Pugh, has got 4 golf balls in a trophy case in his office. He's hit 4 holes in one. 3 of them were at Fulton Country Club.
Really?
4 holes in one.
Chad Ramey and Allie McDonald Ewing grew up.
From the same country club.
9-hole course. Is it 9 or is it 18?
It's 9.
Yeah.
All those years ago, 20-something years ago, here's my age.
Yeah.
I had to do a news story on the driving range at Big Oaks. It was Big Oaks Golf Course. It's now Tupelo National. Covering a kid.
Yep.
a 10-year-old kid from Fulton
Yeah.
and did a news story on this 10-year-old kid from Fulton. It was Chad Ramey.
No kidding.
He was hitting golf balls. And out at the end of that driving range was a lake out there that years later I caught the biggest bass I've ever caught out.
No way.
It was somewhere in the neighborhood of 12, 13 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah, right off the end of that
That's
driving
pretty
range.
cool. That's
kind of
cool.
full circle.
Did Andy Franks, was that the golf course he was involved in?
I believe so, yes. It kind of took it over and gave it a new name,
Yep.
and they're doing pretty
We
well.
were classmates. He was 2-time national long drive champion.
Is that right?
Yep.
Driver, wedge, putter. I got
Best
it.
of 'em. I mean, literally, you get time to practice, just do them.
Okay.
Just chip and putt, wedge, 40 yards to 100 yards, and then go bang driver.
And when it works, credit you. And when it
100%.
doesn't work, it's my fault.
It's on you. Yeah, absolutely.
That's how that works.
That's 100%.
Randy, thank you for
Thank
being
you, Matt. Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Appreciate all you do. I think you do a great job. You're fun. I told you before we started. I listen to you on the radio. I listen to you on the telecast. You can break down a football play that even I can understand. And I don't know anything about it.
Well, thank you so much.
Appreciate it, pal.
Yeah, that's Randy Watkins, Mississippi Sports Hall of Famer, former PGA Tour golfer, and proud Mississippian with a family that loves playing golf, loves hiking those trails, going to our parks, and doing a little deer hunting in between. Thanks for listening to the Mississippi Outdoors Podcast. I'm Matt Wyatt. We'll see you outdoors.